Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Jody Janati, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning. The Chinese symbol for crisis is made up of danger and opportunity superimposed. And I think that's such a great way to start a discussion this morning. You know, as a conflict resolution trainer and speaker, I've always thought that the world is pretty inherently neutral, and then we as human beings put our opinions onto things, whether they're good or bad or right or wrong. And I understand that this month we're talking about the importance of kindness. So I wanted to do a little spin today and talk about kindness to yourself and how to get your head right, and how healthy self-talk will get you in a good position so that you can help other people as well. I know a lot of people are struggling right now. So when I put this information together, I kind of thought about helping people go from surviving to thriving. And we do know that the one thing constant in life is change. So that can be very scary during these times. I wanted to remind everyone that we can only control our controllables. So today I want to focus on two things primarily as we talk. Two things we can control, of course, is our focus of attention, or where we put our focus, and then the choices that we have individually. So I kind of made a beautiful screen share for you. It's like an online magazine to kind of keep us interested in walking through it for the next hour. And then anyone who wants a copy of it afterwards, I'd be happy to give it to you. I tried to make it inspirational, super visual. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here. So let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. So it is got an art theme. Here's the cover. Let's see if I can go back. Here's the cover. So today we'll be talking about the art of healthy self-talk, and really just how to treat yourself with kindness, because a lot of people probably could benefit from that right now. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know any of the answers for anyone today, but I am going to take more of a Socratic approach. Remember how Socrates said, I cannot teach you anything, but gosh, I can make you think. Yeah, we can start thinking today, right? So on the screen, I say Anais Nin's famous quotation, "We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are." And of course, I know a lot of people who would be listening to me today have been very familiar with Joe Dispenza. One of his favorite quotations that I like is, "Your personality creates your personal reality." I'm someone who is really into the Enneagram system, and that could not be more clear about how your personality creates your personal reality related to your focal point of your Enneagram number, which of course is a whole other discussion. But today I want to look at awareness and how awareness can lead to change. So I'm just going to put up a lot of questions. A lot of this we've heard before, but it's good to just refocus on the positive. Are you mindful, or is your mind full? That right there can stop a lot of us to sit and think what we're focusing on. I have a little joke for us this morning. It's not funny, but God, it's clever. Okay, what is the best vitamin for a drama-free person? Be one. Okay, that's a good one. Just be one. That's like $1 million question. How do you be one? I got to visit your site about a year ago, and we talked about like 101 ways to negotiate a difficult conversation. And some of the thoughts are going to be inherent in what we're talking about today, but I'm not going to give any step-by-steps, because I know you've already seen that if you've wanted to watch that. I do want to focus your attention to the right side of the screen, and what are the underlying emotions, or what are the underlying things to stress, anger, and fear. You know, on the emotional scale, stress, anger, and fear aren't even real. They're kind of like what happens because of those things. So if you got deeper into your emotions, we know that if you're experiencing hurt, meaning if you're sitting listening to this right now and you're feeling hurt, your mind is actually in the past. Like, I can't believe he did that to me. I can't believe she said that to me. And we suffer, right? And if you're sitting here right now and you're anxious and worried, like, I can't pay my rent next month and I don't know how I'm going to get ready for this big event coming up, well, then you're living in the future. And anytime our mind is living in the past or the future, we experience stress and anger and frustration and all sorts of negative emotion. So that's something to be mindful of, is where is your focus of attention? If it's in the present and you're mindfully washing your dishes, it's really hard to get angry or hurt or worried. One of my favorite quotations is, worrying is using your imagination to create something you don't want. Oh my gosh, it's just energy spent that doesn't really serve you. On the right side of the screen again, I have a thought here about the word reactive and the word creative have the exact same letters in them. And being a communication professor for most of my career, I love wordplay. I love the way you can think through different sentences, the way you structure it. So I have a few of that in here today. So reactive and creative have the exact same letters in them. So you can get to this meditation of, will you react to what's in front of you and then the cause and the effect play out? Or will you create what you intend so you can actually cause the effect? Of course, we all know, especially in the quantum physics world, that energy flows where attention goes. So if we remember to always focus on the positive, we thrive. So Control Alt Delete, trying to be cute there. Okay, have you ever noticed that the word silent and the word listen have the exact same letters in them? I just love that. If you were to meditate on those, at that thought right there, you'd also notice that if you added an ER to either of those words, you'd quickly become a good silencer of your own intentions or a good listener for your own wants and needs. Of course, that's true with other people too. You can become a good silencer of other people or a good listener of other people. So the focus of being in the here and now is always where you'll find the most peace, right? Notice how I said here and now, just listening to your friends and family as they struggle. Of course, we know that with Esther Hicks, she talks about, I'm figuring it out, I'm figuring it out. That is the mantra that will keep most people from suffering, is to keep your mind in the here and now, rather than in the past where you hurt, or the future where you experience anxiety and worry. If you can stay right here, right now, your greatest mantra would probably be, I'm figuring it out, I'm figuring it out, I'm figuring it out. Oh my gosh, your house burnt down. What are you gonna do? I don't know, but I'm figuring it out, I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring it out keeps you present enough to not have to go into any kind of an emergency state in your brain. So we've all heard the control your emotions or they'll control you. So some tactics that I want to offer that kind of parallel with what I did last time would be the thought of, don't create resistance in your own self-talk, your intrapersonal communication, which self-talk comes from. So the first thought is, don't should on yourself. Don't should on yourself, meaning the language of resistance will always create pain and suffering within. So the words that create resistance, whether you're talking to another person or you're using it in your own mind, which we're talking about today, would be the words on this list. You know, should, I need to, I have to, I ought to, don't, not, stop. These are the words that create a lot of resistance and create a lot of conflict in someone's life. And I think those of us who know Byron Katie, is her greatest quotation, not the one on my right side of the screen here. Byron Katie says, and I love this, if I were into tattoos, I'd probably get it on my body. Byron Katie says, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. God, I love that sentence. It's just so profound. And studying language, guess what the words are that you need to actually argue with reality? It's all the words on the left side of the screen. You should pay your child support. You need to come to work on time. You ought to know better. You can't talk to me that way. Well, the truth is, they didn't come to work on time, and they do talk to you that way. It is what it is, kind of a thing. So there are kind of ways to talk to yourself. Now, last time I was there, we talked about the words that are underlined on the left side of the screen, more on a neuro-linguistic programming level. So talking about how your brain cannot understand those 3 words that are underlined, don't, not, and stop, as a verbal command. So in other words, if I tell you, do not think about the layout of your kitchen and the countertops, or please do not imagine a pink and purple polka dotted elephant, of course your brain goes there. So when you talk to someone with this language, it's never successful, right? If you tell a child, don't touch, the first thing they're going to do is touch, right? If you talk to someone at work and you say, I would appreciate that you don't use sarcasm with me, the first thing out of their mouth is probably going to be something sarcastic. So if you want more peace in your life, in your self-talk, or literally, I would suggest that we refrain from using these words, even in signage. If you put a sign in a high school that says, please do not write on the bathroom walls, you know you're going to see a lot of graffiti before the end of the day. This is the language that triggers a lot of difficult things. So the idea is to be easy to yourself, be kind to yourself. We know that Carl Jung says what you resist persists. And again, that's because we live in a world of attraction and not aversion. So whatever you think about, you bring about. And whatever you push against, you bring about. So you might as well take control of that and focus on something that's positive. Another way I like to think about Byron Katie's long quotation, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. Another way I like to think about her quotation is on the right side of the screen here. I had so many students over the years tell me, it is what it is. God, I hate that sentence. Because no one really lives that, right? If you say that and then you live it, it's profound. But if you say it is what it is and then you get upset by things, you're not living it, and it kind of gets annoying. But for me personally, I know that thinking about conflict resolution with a lot of my clients and students, I have put IS into an acronym of IS, issue solution. Anytime you feel yourself stuck, this is with another person in a dialogue. Wow, you seem to know a lot about that issue. What do you suggest we do to solve it? It kind of helps turn anything that's tense around. If you're struggling personally and you stop and think, okay, what is the issue? I know what the issue is now. What are some ways I could solve this? You can always pivot and focus on something a little bit more positive. So on an individual level, once you get your focal point clear, a lot of things can line up for us, right? So on the screen here, I have 2 visions equal division. So we see that right now, even in our communities and our society, we have a lot of different focal points and there's a lot of division happening. And, you know, we're at a point in history where fear would be happy to teach us, but I think we can learn from a higher level, right? We probably could get to a higher level of collaboration and love and learn our lessons just as easily. So I'd like to look at ways that we can redesign drama or like reinterpret what's in front of us. So be easy with yourself, especially using the language of resistance, the needs to, have to, should, ought to. On the left-hand side of the screen, I have many phrases that you could choose to use when you're dealing with something difficult. I know a lot of people speak very kindly to their family and friends. So why do you allow yourself to be rude to yourself, right? It's totally normal to be kind to yourself. Here's some of the language that you could actually use to figure it out, right? So things are working out for me. Things are working out for me. There's a mantra. Things are working out for me. Things are always working out for me. Do you know that in every spiritual tradition, there's an idea of turn the other cheek? And I just love that because I think conflict is good. Conflict shows us clearly what we don't want, so we can make a conscious decision on what we do want. So a lot of us get stuck on looking at what we don't want and arguing with it, like you should quit drinking and you ought to know better and you better stop that. And we argue with reality by looking at what we don't want, when really I think the spiritual teachings have always been, thank you for showing me what I don't want, and now I'm going to make a conscious decision to turn the other cheek and look at what I do want. Is this what I want? Thank you for educating me on what I don't want. Now I'm going to go look at what I do want. Now, that doesn't mean you condone the things that you don't want, but you definitely don't want to float any energy or attention over to something negative or something that you're opposed to. So you have a conscious decision to make at any point in your life when something is irritating you or bothering you, to just say, thank you for showing me what I don't want. What a great education. Now let's look at what I do want. I think we're at a point where if more people in society knew how to stand for something rather than against something, we could shift a whole planet. So that might be my big question to everyone today is, what do you stand for? What do you stand for to the positive, rather than preaching to your family and your friends and your community all these things that you're against? I think we could shift right there, and it could make a huge wave that would affect everyone. Of course, the late Wayne Dyer favorite quotation or thought, of course, would be, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Gosh, I love that. Steven Spielberg, of course, one of his famous quotations is, your focus determines your reality. Your focus determines your reality. That easily reminds us that we're always one choice away from creating a completely different situation for ourselves. We're one choice away from completely changing our world, and we have that power in our choices and our focal point. Another thought for meditating on the peace that you have in your life. Are you offering people a piece of your mind, or are you offering people peace of mind? Because those are two totally different vibes, right? I like to say you can move from you stress, to you stress. And on the screen, you can see how that's spelled there. And we have distress, we have stress, and then eustress is the technical term for positive stress, and what you might experience on the day of your wedding, or when you're about to run the big race and you're excited about it. It's stress that comes on for good reasons, not for bad reasons. So we could learn to use our energy towards good stress rather than negative stress. Being a communication person, I want to remind everyone that, and we talked about this last time I was there, but the language that you use can free up the resistance in your life. So I'm a huge fan of Marshall Rosenberg's work on nonviolent communication from the early 1990s. And in his work, he discovered that the language of feeling and need really has little to no resistance, and it creates a lot of peace in your life when you use it. So a lot of people think they know how to use this language, right? Like, I'm feeling really frustrated and you need to shut the hell up. No, that's not how you use that language. So let me give you a couple examples of how you use this language. First of all, the issue is the reason you would choose to have a difficult interaction with yourself or with anyone else. So if you know what the issue is, you can get right to the point. Now, we tend to do this very well when we're being professional or at work. But have you ever noticed that with the people you love the most, you should on them the most? So you probably say to your significant other, you should see yourself. You're a freaking nightmare. I don't even know you anymore. Well, that's not productive, right? A more productive way to talk and ease up the resistance would be to say, I'm feeling really frustrated because you forgot my birthday, and I need to know that you actually care about me. That's super clear. So feeling need could be, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and I need to take care of myself. I'm feeling really offended by what you just said to me and I need some time to just process it. Feeling in need is a nice way to handle things when it's in front of you and you're struggling. I also want to remind you that the word may is a very nice word that has zero resistance attached to it. Now, I don't suggest you use the word may if you're equal to someone like your partner, but if you're in charge of a group and you have a little bit more authority in the moment, or you're a parent or a caregiver, it's much more productive to say to a child, you may wash your hands now, than to use one of those resistant words like, you need to wash your hands, stop it right now, you go wash, you need to, and you'll get a lot of resistance. So if you're conducting a large group, and you yell to the group, you need to sit down, stop talking, we're going to start, nobody's really going to comply with kindness. But if you use the word may, you may take your seats now, you'll probably get no resistance. So these are words that we can carry around with us, and they just tend to keep our life a lot easier. Of course, my favorite word is prefer. I've taught in 6 of our Minnesota state prisons, and I've put up with a lot of resistance in the form of really naughty behavior over the years. And prefer works. I can tell you firsthand, prefer works. Instead of telling someone you need to watch your mouth, or you can't talk to me that way, or you ought to know better, or stop, or don't, or you have to, it's almost always better to just say, with I language, I prefer that you don't talk to me that way. I would prefer that you wait over here until I'm done talking to this person. I would prefer that you don't swear at me. I mean, prefer is a nice word that has zero resistance embedded in it, and you probably will do better with people, let alone yourself, right? I would prefer not to be with this person during the holidays. You can use this word to talk to yourself as well. So the question I have for you is, internally, are you chasing pleasure or are you running from pain? Because those are 2 distinct feelings that can affect you from the inside out. I like the thought of choice around how it feels inside. So if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, we all like to start with language of I have to, like I have to go to work. I have to, and this is the language of resistance again, and this is where we create a lot of stress for ourselves. What if you can move the language of have to down to choose to, with the goal being I get to? That has a lot of freedom in it, and that has a lot of excitement in it that actually has us thriving. So we can easily look at this if you put it on like a child. It's just so easy to see. If you say to your child, hey, the neighbors invited us over and they're from another country and you might not have tried their food before. I love it a lot. Listen, you need to be a good child. You will eat the food. Do you understand me? You're going to eat it. You can feel the resistance that you would create in that child, right? The child would be like, I'm not eating that. There's no way I'm going to be good. What if you freed the child up on the front end and you said, hey guys, listen, the neighbors invited us over. They have food that maybe you haven't tried before. I would really like to have good manners when we go over there. Would you be able to maybe choose a couple things and try them to have good manners? Could you do that? You can see that the kids already would be freed up a little bit, like maybe, but they would probably try things. Now, what if you approach the whole situation from the get to level right from the start? What if you said, hey guys, the neighbors invited us over and they're serving that food that I really like. I am so excited that you get to eat it too. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. You see how those kids would probably eat all the food on their plate and they wouldn't even find any resistance in the whole scenario? Sometimes the way we motivate and influence ourselves or other people really has to do with the perspective we're taking. I know that I want to be on a committee that gets to do something rather than has to do something. So if you are someone who has to influence yourself, let alone a group of people, maybe you don't want to use language like, hey, you guys, we have to get this thing done before Christmas. We need to, no one wants to be on that committee. But if you start talking to people like, hey, I think we should choose to take care of this now before the holidays hit, or maybe it's even, hey, we have a week that's kind of slow right now. We get to complete this. Anytime you can get to do something, you're going to free up a lot of the pain in your life, and you will have little resistance and a lot more peace and kindness. I know that before COVID hit, there were probably a lot of people complaining about how they have to go to work and they have to. Well, isn't that funny? When you lose your job or you lose the capability to go out and work with people, you probably never will ever again say, I have to go to work. It's kind of like, I kind of wish I could go to work right now and I would choose it. But aren't we all at that point now where I get to talk to you today? I've been holed up in my house for how long. It's just fun to be a part of something again. I get to talk to people. That's a blessing of and within itself. Have you ever noticed that if you rearrange the letters in depression, you get I pressed on? I think that could be very helpful for some people, just to have as their mantra, or even a screenshot you hang on the fridge. What if your failure was just feedback, right? There's nothing inherently good and bad and right and wrong in the world. Sometimes if you look at things as failure, it does something to you and you're not as kind to yourself and you can't be as forgiving to yourself. But if you refocus it and repackage it as a feedback, then you can learn from it and move forward. So Ram Dass said, turn your melodrama into a melodrama. Isn't that beautiful? Of course, the $1 million question would be, well, how do you do that exactly? We're just having thoughts today about turning this around. On the right-hand side of the screen, have you noticed that the word impossible quickly turns into I am possible? Here's some other thoughts. We'll go this way. Opportunity is nowhere. Do you see how quickly that can turn into opportunity is now here? You could ask yourself, am I going through a breakdown or am I going through a breakthrough? I think we're at a point right now where we're going to see a lot of things break through, and it might be painful in the short term, but I think we're headed for some great things. Of course, who cannot love Yoda when we're talking about the mind, right? Yoda's famous quotation is, do or do not, there is no try. Oh, I love this. I'll tell you that as a professor, I'm guilty of quoting Yoda. I have a lot of students over the years who will argue with me about, Jody, I tried to email you. Jody, I tried to find you. Jody, I tried to scan it over. And I end up hearing this so many times in 25 years that my favorite comeback is, trying is lying. And of course, they look at me like, what are you accusing me of? I'm a liar. And I say, well, what does Yoda say about trying? Do or do not. There is no try. Trying is lying. Yeah, but Jody, I tried to, well, you failed. No, that seems a little extreme, but isn't it the truth? I mean, you're either doing it or not doing it. You either got it to me or you didn't get it to me. Trying is lying. So if you're someone who uses self-talk around trying, you're probably allowing yourself not to do it, pretending that you're giving it your best effort in trying. Trying is lying. We'll trust Yoda on that one. So, hey babe, are you coming to my grandma's birthday party today? Yeah, I'll try. Are they coming? No, they're not coming. They're lying. So what is a better word to use? A lot of the goal setting texts you'll read and things on achieving what you desire, the language of I've decided, which I put on the right-hand side of the screen here, is a much better way to talk to yourself. Like, I'm trying to lose weight, or I've decided to lose weight. I'm trying to ask for a raise, or I've decided to ask for a raise. Once you've decided something, you can line up with it a lot easier and reach your goal. So that might help someone get refocused. The acronyms for fear you'll find are many, right? On my screen here, I remind everyone that fear, false evidence appearing real, can really hurt us on a kindness level and how we treat ourselves and how we react to the world around us. Of course, in recovery, it'll be the bottom two thoughts there. When you're suffering, we'd have feelings of F everything and run. And when you're recovering, it would be more around face everything and recover. So these are good things to think about as well. I know that fear is real. And if you've ever seen someone react in a fear, you can tangibly see it, right? Like there's a whole group of people who are afraid of snakes, even living in Minnesota here. Now we know that snakes in Minnesota probably can't kill you. But if you ask someone who's afraid of a snake, why did you jump up and run away and scream? They'll probably say, I didn't want that thing killing me. So the fear is really false evidence that appears real. I can't tell you how many times this has happened in my life, let alone your life. I mean, I've met a lot of people who are afraid of cats, right? Are you kidding me? Have you remembered the movies from your childhood? Like, we are Siamese, if you please. Oh my gosh, the cat's going to snuff out your baby. Of course, people are afraid of cats. There's all sorts of weird fear that false evidence that appears real. I remember watching an NCIS episode where someone put oxygen, like a needle full of air, into an IV tube, and then when the air got to the patient's heart, he blew up. And then shortly after that, I had an IV, and I got obsessed about the stupid air bubbles in the IV line. Like, excuse me, nurse, is that bubble gonna like pop? And oh my gosh, it's amazing what you can get hung up on with fear. And there's a lot of false evidence that appears very real right now in our world. And if we can sort through that a little bit, we don't suffer as much. I want to show you another thing that's really helpful. I always tell my students, be a verb. Now, to me, that's just a funny way to tell people, get stuff done, quit complaining, just do it. So if I have a student in particular, like using that, Jody, I'm trying, but Jody, I'm trying, Jody, I tried, I might just cut them off and say, trying is lying, be a verb. And what the heck does that mean? Well, be a verb means do something, become active, make it happen. So I want to show you that when you're stuck in your life or you're suffering and you want a way out of that, sometimes you can change your language into a verb and you can find a solution for yourself. So on the screen here, I have some examples. The first example says, if you're stuck, you might be telling yourself, my communication in this group is poor. Well, isn't that kind of more like a adjective, and it just kind of sits stagnant? What if you added more verb to your verbiage, right? What if you added verb that moves? You'd ask yourself, how might I communicate more effectively? The verb moves the issue. I'll also tell you that in conflict resolution, the opposite works. If you get away from movement, you actually allow things to settle down and you'll have more kindness when dealing with other people. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I want to talk to two people that were speaking during a meeting that was inappropriate and bothering people. I could say, Jeff, Heather, can I talk to you for a minute? And then I'd use a bunch of verbs like and pronouns. The two of you were talking during the meeting and it was very rude and you need to stop. And I would create all sorts of resistance with the language of resistance and pronouns and verbs. What if I wanted to calm it down and make it more peaceful? I would get rid of the verbs. I would say something like this. I would nominalize my language. I would say, Jeff, Heather, can I talk to you for a minute? And they'd be like, oh, what? And I'd say, the constant talking during the meeting was an issue. The constant talking. You think people are smart enough to understand your big mouth during the meeting? Yeah, they are. People are really smart. We can give people a lot of credit and we don't need to be rude. When you say, you're late every Tuesday to the 9 o'clock meeting, late starts taking on an action, your is a pronoun, everything starts moving. What if you just said, frequent tardiness has become a problem? That's very nominalized and neutralized, and you can find an easy way to deliver a difficult communication. So language definitely can help us. Here's some other thoughts. If you look at the basic motivators, which gosh, if I had time, I could talk for hours on these topics, but we're just thinking, right? Socratic thinking. If you are thinking about your basic motivators, it really comes back down to pain and pleasure. I mean, if you've ever tried to quit smoking, have you noticed that you immediately start attaching pain to your cigarette? Like, oh, I can't have another one of those cancer sticks. But if you're not trying to quit smoking, it's like so pleasurable to smoke. Same thing is true with your diet. If you're trying to lose weight and modify your food, then all of a sudden you put pain on the foods that you really kind of want to eat, right? But if you're not on a diet, you can have chips and dip and all sorts of beer and all sorts of great stuff, and it's pleasurable. So who controls that? Like, you control that, right? We control our own focal point. My suggestion to you is focus on things in pleasure. Like, you want to do it because it's a pleasurable feeling versus a painful feeling, and you will find you can achieve it easier. I have set my own students and my own self up for destruction around this concept over the years, and I can share this with you. One semester I had a group of students who had high speech apprehension, that public pass out is what they would call public speaking. So they didn't want to take a class around public speaking, and they needed it to graduate. And I took on a group of people who were deathly afraid of public speaking, who were seniors, and I was going to help them graduate. And I thought I was being easy. And on the first day of class, let's see if you can see where I failed here. On the first day of class, I gave them a binder. And I said, in this binder is every single assignment that's due for the entire semester. I know you're all seniors. Pace yourself. I want you to be successful. Well, they looked at all this work and they assigned pain. I can't do this class. I got a million other classes to do. And they assigned pain to this. And I gave them huge chunks to do, right? The whole class. Halfway through the semester, I realized no one's turning in any work. And then one guy turns in some work, and I said to him, you are the first person to turn in any work. And he gave me a pleasure story. He said, my brother's getting married in a destination wedding at the end of September, or the semester, and I need to get this done so I can have fun. Do you see how he was motivating himself to get done with his work? Because his brother was going to have a fun destination wedding that he wanted to attend. He assigned pleasure to getting the work done. Everyone else assigned pain to it. Isn't that interesting? And then it screwed up everyone. Here I thought I was helping everyone. By the end of the semester, I was getting calls like, Jody, could you calculate the exact points I need to get to pass your class, or to earn a B in your class? I mean, they put so much work on me, so much work on themselves. I learned right then and there, definitely assign things in small increments, reward short-term gains, and create a pleasure story in order to get stuff done. Really, that's no different than those of you who are listening that procrastinate. Isn't that what procrastination is? Is you look at the pain for so long, and finally when the pain supersedes the pain of not getting it done, if the pain of not getting it done supersedes the pain of getting it done, that's when you do it. So on Friday, you're like, oh, I got all this work due on Monday, but I'm going to take Friday off and I'm going to punch it out, and then I'll have the whole weekend to play. You know what happens. Friday, you open up your cupboard and you're like, wow, I haven't cleaned my cupboards and scrubbed my floor in the kitchen for years. I think I'll do that instead. And then you don't do the work. And then Saturday, you open up your computer and you're like, oh, Facebook, and I'm going to be online socializing. Saturday's shot. You don't do any of the work, but you start your self-talk like, that's okay. I was going to do it on Sunday anyway. I needed a break. Well, I cleaned the kitchen. I'm a good person. Oh my gosh, I'm ahead of the game at this point. I'm fine. I can procrastinate. It's no big deal. And then on Sunday, you get a call like, the game's on, come on over. And you're like, well, I am kind of short on food. I should go eat some free food and hang out with people. What happens is you put this project off all the way until Sunday night. And let's say you want to go to bed at midnight, and it takes you at least 2 hours to get this done. Well, come 10 o'clock that night, guess what happens? The pain of not doing the project supersedes the pain of actually doing it. So you punch it out like a rock star and you're amazing. And you're like, oh my God, I should have just done it on Friday. I mean, how many of us are guilty of that? Do you see how you could have got rid of all that by just adding pleasure to it at the beginning of the weekend instead of pain? I would say that's always a good strategy, to attach pleasure to what you're doing, especially if you don't love what you're doing. I'd also say that in your intrapersonal communication, in your self-talk, a lot of us, when we're allowing ourselves to be a victim and not do things, we use the language of can't. Why can't I ask her out? Why can't I ask for a raise? Why can't I lose weight? Why can't I? Whenever you get into why can't I, you kind of allow yourself to be a victim. But if you notice that when you switch your dialogue in your head to why don't I just do it? You know that you have the answers and you can just do it literally. The why don't I is a motivator on a self-talk level. So I'm sure many of you have heard the story of the good wolf, meaning there's a Cherokee legend, and you can Google it after this talk. There's a Cherokee legend from a Cherokee chief talking to his grandson, and he tells the grandson about how you'll go through life with two wolves on your shoulders. You'll have a good wolf and a bad wolf, and they're always fighting throughout your entire life. And of course the grandson is concerned, and he asks the grandfather, which wolf wins? And the grandfather says, whichever wolf you feed. So that's another great focal point. I know that when my daughter was suffering with anxiety, I told her that story about the two wolves. And when we would get in public and she would suffer with anxiety, like, I don't want to do that, Mom, and I'm nervous, Mom, all I would say to her is, feed the good wolf, and it would help her get her focal point back on something positive. So that might be a good reminder for some of you to have like kind of an anchor sentence of feed the good wolf, and it'll help you remind to pivot over to the positive. We know that with the work of Abraham, and I know a lot of you listen to that stuff, positive pivoting is nothing more than focusing on the good wolf and positively pivoting over to good feeling thoughts. So I put some on the screen here. It feels good to fill in the blank. I like to fill in the blank. I enjoy it when I am abundant, I'm healthy, I'm figuring it out, things are working out for me, I've been drinking more water, I feel amazing. Sometimes when you do gratitude and you just keep going towards the positive, everything shifts in you and you can find yourself in a kinder world. We also know the sentence, a belief is just a thought you continue to think. A belief is just a thought you continue to think. A belief is just a thought you continue to think. So I would ask you again, who controls your thinking? You do. You control your thinking. And if you are sitting on Friday night with your friends around a campfire and you're having a discussion like, my boss is driving me crazy, well, what do you think your boss is talking about on Friday night? Probably not you. So it's your boss isn't ruining your Friday night. Your thinking about your boss is ruining your Friday night. Your boss isn't even there. And again, who controls your thinking? You do. So that's a good place to anchor. Another word I hear a lot right now is the word tolerate. And I hear it superimposed with the word allow. And I think that there's a great distinction between those two words. And you can feel that one of the words is more around resistance and one of the words is more around acceptance and love and flow. So I put on the screen here kind of what the feeling is underneath tolerate. I don't even like right now when people are saying we need to be more tolerant of people, because there is a negative connotation that kind of comes with that. I wonder if we can find better words for this. If you can see on the screen, there's a lot of negative resistant stuff that comes up under the word tolerate. And then there's also positive things that come up under the word allow. And I can give you a perfect example for this. I remember working for a gal years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and instead of using the intranet to like do your time off sheets and stuff, this woman would expect you to come into her office, fill out a time off form, and then hand it to her to sign when you could just do it on the intranet, right? But what happens is she wanted you to come in there and sign it, and then she would talk to you about how horrible her life was and how amazing she was and how she should have gotten paid more. And I remember I would sit there with a big smile on my face and I would tolerate her. And inside, my self-talk was like, yep, let's go, hurry up, I don't have time for this. Yep, you're amazing, they should double your, I remember gritting my teeth and smiling through it, and I was tolerating it. I just couldn't wait until she shut up and let me get out of there. But isn't that amazing how if I would have approached the same situation and I would have just allowed her to be who she is, like, oh, here we go, good thing I budgeted some time for this, it'll take a good 20 minutes. And then I could even watch her talk on and on about herself and be like, wow, she's amazing. She can sure talk. Whew. I'm glad I had some time to sit with her today. I have an hour for lunch. I still have a half hour left. If I could have just allowed it, I probably wouldn't have had any stress around it. So that's a mindset to contemplate. Are you tolerating things in your environment right now, or are you allowing them? Because one of them will create a lot more kindness in your world. Are you hiding from your own happiness? I could do probably a 3-hour talk on the way that our brain organizes the information in our head. But I put some trigger thoughts on the board here on the left for what is life. Now, I chose the word life because we don't all agree on the same things. We don't all have similar experiences, but I know that we all have a life, right? So if you start thinking about language, and I just want to give you something to ponder here. If you start thinking about the way you describe things, there's a context that inherently gets built into your language. And then underneath that are implications. So we all know that Forrest Gump said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Some people say life's a bowl of cherries full of the pits. If you have 12 children, you could say life is a roller coaster. You could say life is a blessing. You hear people say life is a bitch and then you marry one. I've heard students say life is a garden, dig it. I've heard life sucks and then you die. I mean, we know all these sayings about life. Why do I bring this up? Because whatever you choose to describe anything as in your life, you have to put it into a context. Context, again, is like a setting, and you can't communicate without that. So what I'm asking you to maybe think further on is when you use language to describe anything, what is the implication underneath it? So if you say life is a choice, it implies that you have free will and you have a focal point you can change and choose. If you say life sucks and then you die, you actually turn into a metaphor of gambling. Like, it's not in the cards for me. I'm not lucky. Look at him. He's lucky. Oh, it's a crapshoot, 50-50. It's not in the stars for me. And you kind of turn your life into just allowing it to happen to you without taking any responsibility. These are huge thoughts, and I would love to just go off on this topic alone, but the time won't allow for that. But what I will say to you is, studying conflict, I can give you a solid example. Let's say that two people are in a room and they get into it, like, you need to shut up. No, you shut up. Stop it. No, you stop it. And there's this huge altercation verbally. When they leave that room, one person will walk over to their cube land over here, and someone will inevitably ask them, hey, what happened with you in there? That person will probably choose a context without thinking about it. Here's the context. Let's see if you can hear it. Oh my gosh, did you see the way she came in here like a freaking whirlwind, and she rips it up, and she's hot one day and she's cold the next day? Whatever, she'll cool off. It'll blow over. I'm not worried about it. If you were to stop and think about that, you would hear that the person just said, when I deal with the person of conflict, it's like dealing with the weather. Now, no one would have heard that. On a good listening day, you wouldn't have heard that. Most people wouldn't have said, oh, I think you're being a little tough. They're not like the weather. No, what happens is subconsciously you hear the weather analogy and you might respond like this. I know it's like climate control, and then you go on with your life, and you've both just decided that dealing with that person is like dealing with the weather. So what's the implication underneath it? Oh, the implication is they're stormy. They're going to have climate changes. You never know what you're up against, right? You're going to have to ride it out, the weather. The other person in the altercation might walk out this door, and they're going to have someone ask them, oh my gosh, what happened? Now watch what this person might say. They might say, did you see the way he attacked me in there? I'm not going to sit here and defend myself. I mean, what does he want me to do? Wave a white flag? Like, ooh, I'm afraid of you. You know what? He's on our turf now. Isn't he the new guy? Now, no one on a good listening day would hear that you just said, dealing with him is like going to war. but your subconscious will, and you'll probably respond with something like, hey, I'm going to the 3 o'clock meeting. Do you want me to open up a can of whoop ass? And they'll be like, yeah, it's on. Okay, what are the implications of war? Well, if you say dealing with him is like going to war or being in a battle, it implies that you're going to have to fight, use aggression. You're going to win sometimes, lose sometimes. You're going to have to pick a side. Now, neither story is accurate, but the stories we choose to tell create a context that's fake and then an implication that brings about all sorts of damaging behaviors. I would say at best for this discussion, watch yourself on the way you describe things. What is life? What is trust? What is faith? What is a good education? And watch how you describe this. And then think about what you say in a context, and then what are the implications of that context. Oh, I would love to say so much more about that, but we just don't have the time. Again, we're just thinking today, right? So another reminder for keeping your life as kind as possible for yourself is, remember, it's good to have goals. It's good to have things to strive for. But a lot of times expectation can lead to future resentment. And this is where we get back into the idea of just go with the flow. Just let life happen to you. Stop trying to control every single thing in front of you, and you'll probably end up with a much easier way about you. I know I'm a huge Taoism fan, and we talk in the Tao about how you can swim upstream and go against the current and struggle, or you can kick your heels up and float downstream. And one way is a lot easier than the other. Sometimes if you stop having expectations with people or with yourself, you can relax a little bit and it's much easier for you. Again, I want to remind you, who creates your thinking? Who creates your thinking? The work of Byron Katie, and of course her first book was called Loving What Is. I thought it was profound. I think a better title, if you're not familiar with her work, would be if she would have called it accepting what is. If you can't get to the word loving what is, accepting what is. It's a profound book. It's probably on my top 5 reads of all time. And she's so good at showing you how you struggle with your own thoughts and your own self-talk. So again, we talked about my boss is ruining my life. My boss is ruining my life. I know that I had a student once who would come to class at the University of Minnesota. And that's fine. She would talk to me every day before class, but every day she wanted to tell me about her mother and how her mother was ruining her life and her mother's driving her crazy. And I like helping people, but maybe not every day for months, 10 minutes, 20 minutes before my class. And I thought, I got to stop this cycle. So she was talking and she's like, oh, my mom's driving me crazy. And I just played dumb and dingy, which I happen to be very good at. And I was writing at the board. And I just said to her, oh, is your mom here? And she was like, what? And I said, is your mom out in the hall? She can join us for class today if you'd like. And she's like, Jody, what are you talking about? You know that I'm from Wisconsin. My mom's in Wisconsin. And I just very nicely said to her, well, that's interesting. You just told me that your mom is driving you crazy and your mom's in, Wisconsin. So is your mom driving you crazy, or is thinking about your mom driving you crazy? Because your mom isn't even here. And then I just went back to writing on the board. And it was just such a profound moment because it kind of killed her struggle with herself and all her things she was dealing with. And it kind of got me off the hook too. But you control your thinking, and that's a powerful focal point. Again, we're talking just about focal points and the choices that we have on a daily basis, which again is quite amazing. If you get more into self-talk and projection, that's where I find a lot of answers to where I struggle. On the screen here, I say, when you think the thought, fill in the blank, the thoughts and behavior towards this person become exactly what you're thinking about. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've caught myself doing this in life. Like I get done teaching at a prison down in Faribault, Minnesota. I live up in Duluth, and I got to get in my car and I'm exhausted and I have a huge drive ahead of me, and I get a call from my dad and it says, hi, Jode, this is your dad. I'd appreciate a call back, preferably tonight. And my first thought is, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. Preferably tonight. Oh my gosh, Dad, don't hurt yourself. Preferably tonight. And my next thought is, my dad is so controlling. And then my next thought is, I'm not calling him back. He can wait because he's so controlling. I would never control someone, so he can wait. Now, isn't that interesting? The minute that I have the thought, my dad is so controlling, my thoughts and behavior towards my dad become controlling. I'm not calling him back. He can wait. Isn't that interesting? This is where you can find a lot of relief, is the very things you think about other people, you actually end up doing to them, but usually only always. So I always think if you can get your head right, your life will be right. I've learned as a speaker and trainer, if you can stand in front of a room full of people and no one irritates you, it has only to do with how good you're doing on that day. Like if you don't judge another person, then you're probably not judging yourself that day. Everything truly is projection at one point, which I don't know if that made sense, but we're just thinking. So we are all responsible. I put a prayer here that I know a lot of you are familiar with, but you can put that up on your bulletin board if you need. The art of forgiveness, that's again letting go of resistance, right? When you're angry with someone, you're angry with yourself. When you forgive someone, you forgive yourself. The resistance is in holding on to anything that you don't want. So we have mantras like move on, let it go, get over it, life goes on, it is what it is, put it in the past, what's done is done. And when we live from that mental point of view, a lot of things become a lot kinder around us. When you forgive another person, you allow yourself to forgive yourself. So I have, during this COVID-19 stay, come up with an online book that I wrote, and it's on the right-hand side of the screen here. If you go to my website, you'll easily see the same image. You can click on it. And it's quite a long book, but it's literally how to be collaborative with people right now during difficult times, like 101 things to say and do when dealing with difficult interactions. So I give that to you to look at. Please share it with all your social media contacts. If you need credentials, check. My credentials are on the last page, but there's nothing in it that's political or religious or one-sided. It's just truly how to have a collaborative conversation, 101 ways to be easy and kinder in this world. So I invite you to look at that. The way that I would like to end today is to remind you of a parable that I love so much, and hopefully you'll find some kindness for yourself in this. There's a parable. It's about an old man, a little boy, and a donkey. And I have traced it all the way back to the 13th century, and it's had many names over the years. But in the 13th century, it was written like this, that there was an old man, a little boy, and a donkey, and they went into the marketplace. And all the people in the first group started making fun of them. Like, look at this man and little boy, they have a donkey, and they don't even know how to use him. How foolish. So the old man heard this, and he put the little boy up on the donkey, and they kept walking. And the next group of people said, don't we have respect for elders anymore? I cannot believe this little boy is sitting on a donkey, making this poor old man have to walk. No respect for elders. And they heard this, and they decided to switch places. And now the old man is riding on the donkey, and the little boy is walking alongside. And the next group of people say, that poor little boy, he's got legs half the length of the old man. He has to practically run alongside that donkey. That is so rude. So the old man hears this, and he reaches down and he picks up the little boy, and they're both riding the donkey. And the next group of people say, what a poor donkey. He has to service two people. How cruel. So upon hearing this, the old man doesn't know what to do, and he lifts the donkey onto his shoulders, and the next group call him, insane and foolish and silly. And of course, the moral of the story would be, no matter what you do, people are going to judge you, and people will always have opinions of you that you don't like. So at some point, in order to free yourself and live the best life you can, you have to do you, right? You have to believe in what you believe in and live your truth. Now, what's funny is the story usually ends there, but when you research it all the way back to the 13th century, it has a different ending. So I'll share that with you because it's not always out there. The actual ending to the parable is when the old man and the little boy and the donkey are walking over the river on the bridge to go back to their home. The old man slips and drops his donkey into the river, and the donkey drowns. So the parable really ends with, you are responsible for your own donkey. Now I can see why they cut that out over the years, because it's kind of not a nice way to end the parable, but maybe that's a funny little way to end my talk today. You are responsible for your own donkey. So you can only control your controllables to find peace in your life and to make yourself a little more kind. So again, if you'd like a copy of this information that I shared today, I'd be happy to email it to you. Please check out my book on my website and share it with everyone you know. And thank you. That is the end of my talk today. Have a great Sunday.